Okay, from my understanding, you have 3 generations.
Right. 3 generations of military, actually Army people in my family. My dad, my husband, and now my son.
Your dad was in the Army. What was it like hearing him talk about being in the Army and what he had to go through?
Well, to hear Daddy talk, you would think it was like a European holiday, because Daddy loved the Army. He actually had to have my grandmother sign his papers, his entrance papers to the Army, because he was only 17 during the war, World War II. And in 1942, Daddy was 17. My grandmother signed. He went straight to basic training. And basic training then was up close to Fort Smith. He did basic training here in Arkansas. and then he also went to Fort Hood, and then straight to Heidelberg and straight to Germany for the war. And he was there most of the 3 years. Now, Daddy did get hurt and spent, in fact, he got both legs broken and spent 6 months in a French hospital. But he even talked pleasant about that. I mean, just a little, he was from Scott, Arkansas, which about half the size of Lake Village, if you can believe it. So, Daddy thought that the Army let him see the world, even though it was during a great war and he was injured. He always recalled it very fondly, and he stayed friends. We lost Daddy in 2003, and he stayed friends with some of his soldier buddies his entire life.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear that about your dad. All right. Well, moving on to your husband. What was it like being an Army wife? And
well, the whole scale. It's the greatest time of my life, and like, okay, he also was deployed during Desert Storm. But I dated my husband in high school. He was just my boyfriend then, and so we dated all through college, and he was commissioned a 2nd lieutenant in June 8th. And then June 10th we got married. So I married an Army 2nd lieutenant, and we had a military wedding with the cross sabers and everything. It was, I don't know, dating a cadet all I knew is what Dad talked about in World War II. So I'd never been on a military base except for the Air Force Base to see the air show or anything. And so it was all very, very new to me, and I thought, well, it's going to be glamorous and fun, and I'll get to see the world like Dad. Well, yes and no. Our very first assignment was Germany, and so I found myself 21 years old, living 6,000 miles away from my mom. So yeah, whoa. So it was challenging in that you look at your own strength and say, okay, I can do this. We're out here in the world, we can do this. And your husband's gone a lot. I mean, soldiers are always training, and back in the late 70s, early 80s, when we were in Germany the first time, you still had the Cold War. They had a very serious mission. He was a tanker, an armored battalion guy, and so he was gone training all the time. In fact, the very first year we were married, he was gone 195 days. So I was a brand new bride away from my mom. But the USO and other organizations always came in and were very supportive of families, knowing their soldier was gone a lot, and bringing stuff in for entertainment and to make sure we're okay, morale and well support, MWR is what they say. But then we came back to the States and have several assignments here in Texas and Pennsylvania and Oklahoma and everywhere. And then we went back to Germany in 1989. You know about 1989, right?
not quite.
Okay, well, that's the end of the Cold War. And so we were there when things were very hot in 1979, 1980. The Czech Republic was still very interesting at that time, and the threat of the Russians and communism was very real. And then in 1989, November of 1989, the Cold War was over. The Berlin Wall came down, and we went there 10 days after the end of the Cold War officially. But it still wasn't as, I don't know, as free to military people to go around in the former Eastern Bloc countries as it was just for civilians. I remember the first time we went there, the kids and I could walk up and touch the wall and go over into the east side, the East Berlin side, but they wouldn't let my husband because of the security clearance. And so we went back several times to Berlin to explore the East, and it was very, very interesting. West Berlin and the Western countries progressed from 1945 until 1989, much more so than the communist-controlled Eastern Bloc countries. And so it's very interesting to see communism and socialism, what that happens to a country. I make you real thankful to be an American, thankful for our country and the freedoms we have. And it was that, I guess that was one thing. Being an Army wife and growing up in the United States, you just say, well, this is the way things are. But when you see that there is an actual threat, that somebody wants to kill you for what color passport you carry, you don't ever think about that. And so being an Army wife, that was one thing that became very real to me, is that the United States has enemies. And because of our soldiers, we're protected from those enemies. And we're in another war now, you know. And that's the third generation. That's my son.
Right.
But I want to tell you one more story about my husband was deployed to Desert Storm. We were stationed in a very remote area, about 13 kilometers from the old East German border. And all of our soldiers were gone, and it's just a bunch of wives and a bunch of kids. And so the USO came up through there, and school was out, so it's like, okay, what do we do with, here we are with our kids at nowhere land. And so the USO came, and they did clown school for our kids. It was just the greatest thing. And they taught the kids to juggle and tell jokes, and everyone was laughing, and I think, well, that's what that was for, you know, make the families laugh at a time that's scary.
All right, so how do you feel about the USO? What are your views on what they do?
It's really incredible volunteer organization. What soldiers do is very serious and keeps families apart a lot. And they not only support the soldier and take care of what the soldier's needs, but they also care about the family, like running the clown school for my kids. You know, my kids were really moping around, Dad's gone, Dad's been gone for 6 months, and they came, and my kids were dressed up with red noses and laughing, and all the kids of the community were there, you know, and they're just a very helpful organization. Any airport that you go into, there's a USO. And so all my kids know this is, let's go get free ice cream. Well, that's what it is to kids, it's free ice cream. But to soldiers, it's free information. And for wives, it's free comfort.
Wonderful. So your father was in the Army, your husband was in the Army, and your son is in the Army now.
That sweet little boy that went to clown school. It was really difficult. I didn't think my kids, my older 2 sons went to 13 schools. We moved 13 times during 20 years. And I didn't think any of my kids would ever be in the military. I really didn't know how they felt. I know we did a lot to make sure their lives were secure and they had needs, but you have to give up family relationships, or family relationships are at a distance. But the day my son turned 20, he was down at the recruiting office, and the guys in charge of the recruiting office, my husband had been recruiting battalion commander, and so they knew my husband. And so my husband gets a phone call from the station commander and said, Sir, your son is down here trying to join the Army. And so my husband was very proud. He was very, very proud. But he did go down there and said, okay, here's some things that are great, that great area, and here's some things that will scare your mother. And so, yeah, like chemical court would scare your mother, don't do that. So Justin joined the Army, and he was 20, and he joined the Army Reserve. So I thought, okay, this is not a big deal. You know, we were active duty Army. We were never home, and I think I missed 19 Christmases from my mother. It was terrible. Mm-hmm. But I thought, okay, the Army Reserve, it's not a bad thing. And then 9/11, there's always somebody that hates us, and then we always have the soldiers to do what they do to protect us. And so that kid that was 20 years old that had been in clown school gets activated and goes to Baghdad for 15 months, and it was just very, very scary. To have your husband go, I expected it. You know, I married a soldier. I knew what I was in for, but to have your son go is really different. And so he did his 15 months in Baghdad. He came back home. In fact, he did very well there, and he got a direct commission as a second lieutenant. And then he got transferred to another unit, and he got activated again, and he's in Afghanistan right now. So, but you want people out there who believe in what our country stands for, and you want USO supporting those people, making those hard decisions and protecting us so that we can, you know, have the freedoms that we have. So you can go to schooling where you want to, and on Sunday pick any church you want or not go, you know, so that we enjoy our freedoms because of what our soldiers do.
So we've covered that you have 3 generations of family members in the Army, and we know that you're a proud mom of a soldier, and we know that the USO takes very good care of them. Is there anything that you would like to say to our wonderful troops?
You know, anytime you see a soldier, even in the airport or anywhere, I always say, you know, thank you for your service. In fact, and also thank you to the USO. The last time I talked to my son on the phone, he was getting ready to the manifest or the troop roster that they have when they turn it in. The soldiers are about to go back to a combat area had been processed, and so I thought I was going to get to talk to my son until he got ready to leave. And so we talked for just a few minutes, and he said, "Mom, I've got to go." And I said, "Why? What? Just talk to me for a few more minutes." And he goes, "Mom, the USO is here. They brought us a really great meal." And I said, "Okay." So it was that same little happy voice of when the USO came to do the clown school. And so I'm just glad they're there to bring in real food when I can't. So, yeah. So just, you know, soldier sacrifice, family sacrifice, but it's for the highest cause. Right. And my husband, he's even though he's retired, he teaches ROTC and still, you know, helping kids be good citizens. Not necessarily join the Army or a service, but to be a better person in our country and know what our country stands for. So he's still giving. So thank you to all of our soldiers for their service.
All right, well, thank you
Oh, you're very
for sharing
welcome.
your story.
You're very welcome. Thanks for asking.
All right.